Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this live Team Dominator weather briefing. We have got Tropical Storm Fred that has formed. It is just off the southeastern tip of the Dominican Republic right now, and we also have an enhanced risk across lower Michigan into eastern Wisconsin, and that includes the Chicago area once again in northern Illinois. Here we go again with a massive enhanced risk, 5% tornado probability. Those tornado probs extend all the way back into eastern Iowa as well. The greatest tornado threat looks like it's going to be eastern Wisconsin into lower Michigan and maybe tailing down into northeastern Chicago. But first, I wanted to update you on Tropical Storm Fred. This thing could have impacts southeastern U.S., likely impacts. It just is a question of how substantial those impacts are going to be. Right now, the cone includes the whole entire state of Florida. Looks like this weekend that tropical cyclone, Tropical Storm Fred, is going to be very close to the Florida Keys. It is going to be interacting with land for a little while as it heads off to the west-northwest. Initially, moving over the Dominican Republic, some of the higher terrain there, the western portion. And then it looks like Fred is going to graze along the northern coastline of Cuba and will certainly have some land interaction that could temper its intensification. The intensity models are definitely picking up on that, keeping Fred as a tropical storm through much of its journey. The SHIP model, though, does now intensify it into a Category 1 hurricane when it reaches the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There is an upper-level low that is forecast to evolve over the eastern Gulf as Tropical Storm Fred approaches the Florida Keys, and that should prevent it from being a substantial hurricane by the time it reaches the Keys as we're approaching the early part of the weekend. And then it looks like the later part of the weekend, even toward Monday, this thing could be up near the central Gulf Coast, once again, eastern Gulf Coast, anywhere from Mississippi all the way to the east. Even New Orleans should keep a very close eye on this thing. One thing I've learned by following tropical meteorology is really lots of surprises are always in store. There's a lot of uncertainty down here in the barotropics. There are definitely some steering mechanisms out there. Right now, this tropical storm is heading east to west on the southern periphery of a sprawling subtropical high pressure over the open Atlantic. And it looked like Fred was trying to form a center a little bit further north yesterday, closer to Puerto Rico. And if that would have happened, then it is possible that this thing could have even missed the Dominican Republic altogether. But that center reformation with that spin underneath it, enhancement in thunderstorms, was a failed attempt there to come out further north. And we do have some good spin here with Tropical Storm Fred. Maximum sustained winds at 40 miles an hour. A little bit of an outflow pattern. You can also see with this upper level cirrus here, decent little compact tropical cyclone, decent core. It would be likely to intensify today, but it's going to be heading over land and big time mountains too over Hispaniola. Some of those mountains are in excess of 8,000 feet up there. Likely going to tear apart this tropical cyclone as it heads off to the west-northwest. But I am definitely considering chasing Fred, especially if it's a hurricane. If it's a tropical storm when it makes landfall, probably a little bit less likely. In that case, I may be more apt to go after the monsoon, some of those flash floods out there. But we know how these hurricanes are going this year. Even when the intensity models are showing a minimal storm, there is always that potential that once this thing hits the bathwater over the Gulf of Mexico, that it could intensify much greater than a Category 1 storm. And even on satellite, you can start to see some of these convective elements moving from south to north, showing that convection is still wrapping around that center. This thing is definitely organizing on approach to the southeastern tip of the Dominican Republic. And we're also watching some additional disturbances further out in the Atlantic as well. Here is a couple of different decent tropical waves. This one is going to be a big one, I think. This is going to be potentially a major hurricane. The intensity models, the conditions across the tropical Atlantic are getting a lot more moist. There's not really any dust out there anymore. We're starting to get some favorable uplift with a favorable phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. That's why we're seeing this uptick here in the tropical Atlantic. Got a little tropical wave down here that's a little bit too far south. That's likely going to have some issues with land down there. Little weaker wave right there as well. But then further out, look at this really robust tropical wave here, likely to become a tropical depression in the coming days, eventually on approach to the Lesser Antilles there. But the intensity models are a lot more aggressive with this system, moving from east to west. And one thing I'm noticing with the positioning of this Bermuda high over the tropical Atlantic is it does look like it's going to have a pretty far westward extension of that subtropical high, possibly over the southeastern U.S., and that's going to cause these tropical systems to head into the Gulf, just like we're seeing with Tropical Storm Fred here as it heads over to the west-northwest. The good news is that at least Fred's going to have to move over some of this mountainous terrain there over Hispaniola and Cuba as it heads off to the west-northwest there. But I'm thinking about heading down to Florida to intercept Fred, and then I'll already be in the region for this next hurricane that's organizing down in the intertropical convergence zone here, this band of storms that is the most common generator of these tropical cyclones. And you can certainly see that spin out here, clockwise spin, definitely showing the westward extension of that high pressure there, and that's what's going to cause Fred to continue trucking off to the west-northwest, and eventually it'll turn to the north on the western periphery of that high pressure. And look at all those severe thunderstorm warnings up in the Chicago area right now within that enhanced risk already verifying up there. And let's discuss the severe potential now up across the upper Midwest. I should have been chasing these tornadoes over the last several days, but I had some obligations here. I got to get my vehicle fixed once again at 10 a.m. today, the third session for Dominator 4, making some big-time fixes in time for hurricane season. And then I'm hoping to get the Dominator weather station as well on the roof so I can start measuring that real-time data inside these hurricanes. I do have the extra subsonic sensor, so I will be measuring microbarometer data at the very least inside these hurricanes. But we've got a mid-morning windbag here coming in to the Chicagoland area. Look at this windbag surging out here. Big gust front. It's already come through Chicago with big-time gusty winds there. Gusty winds could continue with a bit of a wake low back behind that initial gust front. But you can see that gust front now starting to move out over southern Lake Michigan here, bringing with it very strong winds. Looks like that gust front is about to arrive in the Waukegan area, however, with some big winds, likely gusting to over 60 miles an hour there, moving out over the lake. You can see some of those higher wind velocities up there as well, 40, 50 miles an hour up there. Pushing 30 meters a second, so we are pushing 60 to 70 miles an hour along that leading edge. But the strongest winds are right along the leading edge of that gust front, as you can see here. Evanston likely just moved through that area, moving out over open southern Lake Michigan now. And there is going to be a reinvigoration of storms this afternoon. So that's what we are going to look at next. That's what there is an enhanced risk for out here. Let me pull up the internet so that we can break down these models. I feel like I'm in the movie Groundhog's Day, waking up, doing these live briefings, wishing I was out there as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my Varsity Tutors class yesterday. I'm still waiting for the link on YouTube that I'll post just in case you missed it. But I've been preparing for that class for several days as I've been watching this tornado setup happen in the upper Midwest. And again, we've got an enhanced risk today, but let's take a look at the RAP analysis. You can look at the mesoanalysis graphics here, and let's see how the atmosphere is going to evolve this morning. You've got this mesoscale complex, several severe thunderstorm warnings across northern Illinois this morning. Let me make sure this is centered properly. I'm going to have to cut out here at around 9:30 so I can bring my vehicle in. So I've still got another 15 minutes. We can break down this forecast. Whoa. So look at that minimum there in Cape, maximum in convective inhibition associated with that complex of storms. Let's see how the atmosphere responds out here. The enhanced risk areas across eastern Wisconsin. This is the 15Z wrap, so we're going to go all the way out to 21Z. Looks like that MCS reinvigorates a bit in northern Indiana here in a couple of hours. Definitely some convection around South Bend there, a little leading edge of that outflow. Could be some severe storms there as well. And you can start to see that atmosphere really destabilize in Wisconsin. And even in a couple hours here, we already start to see the development of vigorous convection into central Wisconsin, basically La Crosse off to the east-northeast. That's already by 17Z. We go to about 2 p.m., and those storms are pretty robust. We've got southwesterly surface winds at about 10 to 15 knots. You also have a destabilizing environment there in southern lower Michigan as that MCS continues to truck into northwestern Ohio, moving into southeastern lower Michigan. But really that new convection that develops in Wisconsin, that's the event. And the morning convection with severe weather also is incorporated into that enhanced risk. But look at those winds start to back out ahead of that convective band as it approaches eastern Wisconsin. That's going to lead to an increase in the low-level shear. Also look upstream across lower Michigan how that cape just really builds through the day. 4,000 to 5,000 cape up there. This is a big-time cape event here, 4,000 to 5,000 cape across the target area. Let's see how the wind shear increases across southeastern Wisconsin. Look at that. You get a little bit of an invigoration in the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative felicity, southeastern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, southern lower Michigan. And once that convective line sags to the south through central Wisconsin and it starts to move into southeastern Wisconsin, the wind shear is going to increase dramatically after about 4 p.m. This evening. So you got a big cape event, much better wind shear than we had yesterday for that textbook windbag event that evolved into northern Illinois. Today there's much more favorable wind shear for tornado potential, even though that parent trough is ejecting off to the northeast into Ontario. The upper Midwest is the hot spot this year. Gotta be kidding me here. And even though that trough is ejecting up toward Hudson Bay, much stronger mid-level flow and cyclonically curved mid-level flow here across the upper Midwest this morning here. That's why we got this little MCS that came out of eastern Iowa there as well. Going toward midday. Look at these westerlies. Look at this big-time jet streak here. Cyclonically curved as well, upper level system. This is the last day of big severe weather here across the upper Midwest, and kinematically this is definitely the more intense wind fields, at least in the mid to upper troposphere here. Let's see what this thing does with the low-level jet. It might be a little bit displaced from the storms, but that's a pretty big low-level jet across southeastern Wisconsin into northern Illinois there at 21Z. Banked up right up against the storms, but the strongest is just to the southeast of those storms. So as that convective line sags into southeastern Wisconsin, it's going to encounter that stronger low-level wind shear. And I think that this is a pretty decent tornado setup. Milwaukee, southeastern Wisconsin, eventually maybe into northern Illinois, definitely eastern Wisconsin, even Green Bay up there. These are the 850 winds, a kilometer up. And you can see why the Storm Prediction Center expanded those tornado probabilities west. You've got 40 to 50 knots there at 850, expanding out ahead of that convective line. The convective line's back here in central and southeastern Wisconsin at 5 p.m., and the strongest low-level jet is a little bit displaced out ahead of it, out ahead of that convective line. That's really the only weakness that I see here, is that the convective line is just a little bit northwest of that wind shear, and then it possibly could veer with time. The fact that the 3-kilometer NAM doesn't have a ton of convection here, that means that these are likely going to be individual supercell storms across central Wisconsin as well within this convective band. You see the hint of a couple of renegade supercells within that convective line. But the fact that the 3-kilometer NAM is not convecting that immensely tells me that there's a potential that these could be supercell storms sliding into southeastern Wisconsin within that band. And there is some decent 0 to 1 kilometer shear, pushing a $150, 150 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. That's a meter squared per second squared are the units. Slightly greater wind shear by 0Z out across southwest lower Michigan, but the convective line is going to be back there into southern Wisconsin. But any of these storms, any individual supercell storms that are able to evolve within that environment with 5,000 CAPE and decent low-level shear, surprisingly so, here across southeastern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, even southern lower Michigan, you're a bit cleared out by that MCS. But boy, that MCS being in northern Illinois, moving out over southern Lake Michigan, and that instability coming in from eastern Iowa into Wisconsin, I don't think that the Wisconsin warm sector is going to be too impacted by that MCS that currently has those severe thunderstorm warnings across northern Colorado there. And then you can see that low-level jet increase even more across northern Illinois as that convective line sags off to the south. And it's not showing the development of a massive bow echo or derecho that's going to sag off to the south. If anything, the 3-kilometer NAM shows a Baker complex holding back into Iowa, northern Missouri, and that slight risk does extend out into eastern Iowa as well. Let's look at the dry bias model. The HRRR, on the other hand, does have some cellular convection here across southeastern Wisconsin, right at about 6-7 p.m. there. So these could be tornado producers, even all the way up toward the Green Bay area. These storms moving out over central Lake Michigan certainly could pack a punch as well. They're going to develop pretty early into central Wisconsin by about 3 to 4 p.m. When these storms first go up, the low-level wind shear isn't incredibly impressive, but you've still got 30 knots there out of the southwest, about a kilometer above the ground. So that does show potential that these storms, once they go up at about 3 or 4 p.m., could have a tornado threat right out of the gate there in central Wisconsin. Looking at the 0 to 1 kilometer EHI, definitely showing that overlap of a 0 to 1 kilometer wind shear with that instability across central Wisconsin. Big bean-shaped supercells there. A cluster develops by 3 or 4 p.m. into central Wisconsin. And the wind shear only increases as you go into southeastern Wisconsin, into northern Illinois. They're available for these storms. Green Bay down into central Wisconsin. These are going to continue to build southwest into the southwestern portion of the state. That looks like there is definitely a decent potential for tornadoes today, especially if you can get a right mover. If you can get a storm that's moving east-southeast, then you've got a big-time hodograph. But there's plenty of streamwise vorticity here with these southwesterly surface winds flipping around to even west-northwesterly in the upper troposphere. Should favor some right movers, maybe even moving a little bit south of due east. But a nice looping hodograph there within central Wisconsin. Quite moist, even with the HRRR dry bias, still has plenty of moisture there. Even into northern lower Michigan, looks quite favorable if any of these storms can make it across Lake Michigan there. Even up toward the central upper peninsula. Decent soundings up there as well for a tornado threat as those storms develop from central Wisconsin all the way up into the central UP. Marquette, down toward Escanaba. Definitely need to keep an eye out on this as well. I could see the whole eastern upper peninsula getting some pretty vigorous, severe weather here. And I do think that these are going to be cellular storms. I mean, there could even be a significant tornado here across southeastern Wisconsin with this setup. The low-level jet increases as you go towards 0Z with this convective line sagging down into northern Illinois here. And then you've got a squall line by 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, that stretches from the eastern upper peninsula of Michigan, Newberry area, back toward Traverse City, all the way down through southeastern Wisconsin into northern Illinois. Big-time severe weather event here. And that goes all the way up into Ontario as well, with a tornado threat up into Ontario as well, to the northeast of Lake Superior, north of Lake Huron there as well. And then as you get about 9 or 10 p.m., severe storms making landfall there in lower Michigan, potentially moving toward Grand Rapids area, back toward Grand Haven, through northern Illinois, west of Chicago. Big MCS forming, squall line. Part of the reason why this enhanced risk includes lower Michigan now is for evening, late evening, and tonight, this big mega squall line coming in Likely going to be some flash flooding too across northern Illinois. Already saturated soils out there. Training thunderstorms over northern Illinois, one after another, moving over the same area there. Chicago, basically back toward Davenport, Iowa. Definitely a ton of rainfall associated with this. This is at about 11 p.m., 10, 11 p.m. Central Eastern Time. And that squall line continues to sag off to the southeast and southern lower Michigan by this time. By 10, 11 p.m., almost to midnight. And then the western portion of the line, reinvigorate, continues to remain robust there across northern Illinois, even through the midnight hour. Eventually sagging all the way into central Illinois. For those lightning hippies out there that want to get some beautiful lightning shots, should be a great night to do it here across central and northern Illinois for this setup. So I think that the enhanced risk is certainly justified out there. Definitely is a tornado threat across central Wisconsin initially about 3 or 4 p.m., spreading into southeastern Wisconsin as you go into the evening hours, maybe even northern Illinois. And eventually that squall line will move in to lower Michigan as we go through the late evening hours. And we do have special marine warnings as well across southern Lake Michigan. This MCS is pretty south of central Wisconsin, so I don't think that this is going to influence the development of instability across central Wisconsin, with most of that instability flooding in back behind this thing from eastern Iowa up into central Wisconsin. It is possible the 3-kilometer NAM is picking up on a little subsidence behind this, and that's why it has a little bit less of that convective initiation across central southern Wisconsin. But I also see that as kind of a sign that there could be individual cellular storms out there as well, potential for supercell storms. We do have some reinvigoration of this MCS, some gravity waves that are out ahead of this squall line here. There you can see the gust front that is over southern Lake Michigan now. This is probably evidence that MCS is going to reinvigorate across northwestern Indiana as we go into the late morning hours through the early afternoon. Could be some more severe weather as well up there across northwestern Indiana, far southwestern lower Michigan as well. But the main event for severe weather today is going to develop across central Wisconsin, back toward La Crosse to Green Bay, maybe even up toward Escanaba in the central upper peninsula. And those are going to be supercell storms capable of producing tornadoes. So thank you everybody for joining me for my morning weather briefing. Big enhanced risk area for severe weather, eastern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, into lower Michigan. Very important to stay tuned to those watches and warnings today in and around the enhanced risk area, slight risk, even the marginal risk back into eastern Kansas, back towards Salina, and across large portions of the northeastern U.S. Should keep an eye on this. That slight risk, though, in central and northern Ohio is for that MCS that is forecast to continue pushing west to the east. So I'm going to keep watching Tropical Storm Fred as it may head toward the eastern Gulf of Mexico by this weekend. Likely going to go live as well this afternoon doing radar breakdowns of this severe weather event in eastern Wisconsin into lower Michigan. And meanwhile, I'm going to head out and get my car fixed here at 10 in the morning so that it can be ready to chase hurricanes as necessary. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to my weather reports. Thank you, Facebook supporters, for making these live briefings and live storm chasing possible. I'm going to start doing live Q&As and bring back Storm Chase EDU now that we're approaching the fall here. We're going to need to do some things in between these hurricane intercepts as well. So we'll be reinvigorating, bringing back Storm Chase EDU. I'm also going to do a weekly Q&A session for Facebook supporters as a thank you for making these weather briefings possible and live storm chasing. So thank you, everybody. Have a great Wednesday, and I'll be back live this afternoon as those storms fire in central Wisconsin.